Alcoholic. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on this meeting. I've got a bunch of friends on this meeting. I know, I know so many people up in Canada. I love Canada. I love going there, and that'd be really cool to do something with Katie. You want to talk about somebody with some energy. She's a dear friend of mine. Anyway, my topic tonight is basically it's the last line in step 11. Uh, when we know God lovingly watches over us, we know that when we turn to God, all will be well with us here and hereafter. That's an amazing statement to me, and it's a good thing that when I walked into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous in 1989, that you didn't stop me at the door and say, alcoholism's your problem, and you need to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, and then everything will be fine when you turn your will over to God. I would have said, thank you so much for the information. Here's a little bit of money for your basket. I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Because that was so foreign of a concept. So it was not the way I was living. It was not the way I was believing. I'm coming in off of a 20-year run of chronic alcoholism, where all every thought in my head is based around me and my pain, and how is this going to affect me, and how am I going to figure this out, and how am I going to avoid this, and how am I going to get out of that. So to think that there's a power, a God that can solve any of my problems or bring me to a place of comfort and be able to manage my life, it's just wouldn't have made any sense. So I love how they approach step 2. We came to believe. It doesn't say we believed. It says we came to believe. And really, how did that happen? How did that happen for me? I mean, there's a lot of people that are dying from alcoholism right now that are never going to get it. There are a lot of people who are dying of alcoholism who come into Alcoholics Anonymous a little bit here, a little bit there, really don't come in and do their job, and really don't get sober, and then figure they gave that AA a shot. They gave that AA a shot. It didn't work. There's so many people like that. Like, what's different? What happened with me that I was able to grasp onto these concepts and become willing to take the spiritual exercises that brought about a spiritual awakening and a recovery from alcoholism? What is it? What is it about me? How did that happen? And I look back at periods of time, and all I can see is the paintbrush across my life of the grace of God. Because I was belligerent, I was argumentative, I was prejudiced, I knew more than you did without you even opening your mouth. I knew what you were going to say. And I was just belligerent denial, they talk about in the spiritual appendix. That was me. What happened? Well, I'll tell you this. What happened with me was alcoholism took me down. And by the time I got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a mess. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years of my drinking, I was a blackout, oblivion, daily drinker. I think there's some people in here who understand what that is. When I could get alcohol, I drank it hard, I drank it fast, and I went from sober to blackout in about an hour and a half, and I went to unconsciousness within 3. So when I started drinking, I just drank myself unconscious. And that's like the last 3 or 4 years of my drinking. That cuts down on your social life. I loved it when I came into AA. Yeah, I drank in a bar. I closed the bar every night. If I would have gone into a bar at 6 o'clock at night, I'd have been passed out on the bar at 8. That's the way I was not able to pace myself. You know what I mean? Like there was just no control left in my drinking. If it was there, it was going down my throat and it was going down hard. So that kind of living, if you survive it, if you wake up and the clouds of delusion part just enough for you to get a clue that you're in some real trouble here, and you're lucky enough to get into Alcoholics Anonymous, that's basically what happened to me. And I came into AA, and it was months before I gave God any credit. It was months before I took spiritual prayer and meditation seriously. It was months before I understood step 6 and 7, let alone 10 and 11. And step 3 was saying the prayer, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. So here I am. I'm up against alcoholism with no solution, and I'm trying to treat this alcoholism, trying to treat it with massive meeting attendance, and saying yes in the meetings. You want me to pick up the chairs? Sure. You want me to drive somebody home? Sure. I mean, I was desperate enough to do all that stuff. But I'm trying to treat my alcoholism with the fellowship. And that only lasted as long as it lasted. And what happened with me was I was exposed to some people who I was exposed to a guy who gave me some cassette tapes that exposed me to some people who were doing a big book study. This is maybe May of 1990, and I started listening to some Joe and Charlie workshops. Then I moved on to some Joe Hawk workshops, and then I start listening to all this stuff because it's challenging, but it's also comforting to me. I mean, these people that were doing the workshops were speaking with authority. They were speaking with experience, but they were also speaking with authority. And I started to trust what they were saying. And I started to get inspired by what they were saying. And I started to actually do some of the stuff that they were asking us to do. And through some of these early spiritual exercises, I started to come to believe that there's a power greater than myself that can work in me and through me and do for me what I can't do for myself. Now, going from the person who walked through the door to someone that starts to believe in the spiritual life, starts to truly trust and rely on a God that I can't see or understand or define. I see the grace of God on that. I see the change in my heart and my spirit. The only way I think that would have happened. Listen, I brought the desperation, but I didn't bring the inspiration. The inspiration had to come from a greater place than me. And I was inspired by some of you. I was certainly inspired by the tapes. And I'd also run out of road. I'd run out of plans. So I got about the business of the steps. And step 3, I made a decision to do the rest of the steps. And I made a decision to further a relationship with this power greater than myself. In step 4, I identified and became honest and wrote down the things that had been blocking me off from any experience with the divine. If you had resentment, self-centered fear, and guilt, shame, and remorse like me, you're not you're not in touch with the divine. What's happening is you're in a head that wants to kill you. I'm always afraid. Oh my God, tomorrow's gonna be. Oh, tomorrow I can't. Tomorrow's gonna be. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I can't believe I did that. What? So I'm always in the past, or I'm always in the future, and I'm never in the holy now, where I can experience God. I've got a head that wants to kill me. I believe that the day I separated from alcohol, my alcoholism became an emotional illness. All right. And the resentment was on me, and the shame was on me, and all the voices in my head trying to manage an unmanageable life, and trying to quantify my existence. It was just too much. So I made a decision, and I inventoried these things, and I found out that I was always pissed at everything. I found out that I was always afraid of everything. And I found out that because of my sensitivity of being a sensitive alcoholic, I'm always ashamed and guilty and remorseful over all the ways that I fell short. I shared all this stuff with a sponsor. I had faith in him, and I had faith in the step process. And I told him everything, even like Tallahassee 74. I even told him that, told him everything. And then I went home for an hour reviewing what I had done. Are my stones properly in place? Have I tried to skimp on this spiritual process? And I have to come to terms with I did the absolute best that I could at that period of time. And I came to an understanding that this thing called life is going to be too much for me to be able to manage moving forward. Just not going to be able to manage it myself moving forward. I would have done it, if I could have, I would have done a hell of a lot. I wouldn't have been living with mom at 33. You know what I mean? If I could have managed my life. So, okay. Am I willing to have God remove these defects of character? Yes. And I humbly ask God, God, take it all, dude. The good and the bad. The milkman could manage my life better than I've been doing it. So here it is. Have fun. You got your work cut out. I know you made the universe in 2 or 3 days, but it's going to be a real challenge. Trying to figure me out. So here you go, and then I understood, not only because of the step work, but I understood intuitively by this point in time that I need to set right, however I can, the records that I've caused in the past. Basically, because I'm not gonna get past the shame. I'm not gonna get past the guilt. I'm not gonna get past the remorse if I don't take some action on this. And all these things are things that are blocking me off from the sunlight of the spirit, a clean shot, with the experience of the divine. So I actually set out and I actually started to make some amends. I made a ton of them. Old bosses, old wives, old friends. It just went on and on and on. Stores that I'd stolen from, all kinds of things. And I went, and you heard a lot of this out of me, knocking on the doors. And I went and I made amends. And something had changed. By this time, I'm a year and 6 months sober, a year and 3 months sober, and I have changed. I mean, they talk about the educational variety of the awakened spirit in the appendix. Well, I had changed by this period of time. There was confidence. There was calm. I wasn't like ready to explode at any second. Everything was kind of cool, and people started to ask me to sponsor them, and I started sponsoring a ton of people. And then, and then I look at step 10, which is applying all of these spiritual principles into a reactive way of life. The spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. And in step 10, I'm really trying to start to live it. And please understand me when I tell you I did none of this. I'm not even going to say perfectly. I did none of it adequately. You know what I mean? The guardrails are so wide in Alcoholics Anonymous. The grace of God is so overwhelming that you can make a lot of mistakes. As long as you're willing and you're taking action, I believe there's a clear road ahead, because I did so many things wrong, and the mistakes I made should have been fatal ones, but they weren't, because I kept trying. So I was no perfect example of this recovery process. I don't even know if I was an adequate one, but I was really, really trying. And let's now talk about step 11. My first experience with praying and meditating was I was sober about 3 or 4 months, and my life exploded. I mean, like states were catching up with me for warrants, and I was losing jobs and all kinds of stuff in a very short period of time. And I remember going over to my sponsor's house, and he asked me this question. I thought it was a very stupid question. He goes, "Chris, do you pray?" And I'm like, "What? What in the world does that have to do with fleeing to avoid prosecution, Phil?" What does praying have to do with zero balance in the checking account? I don't understand how those things equate with each other. But he was pointing me toward our solution. And he got me to agree to start to pray. Well, as I move through these steps and my spirit starts to awaken, prayer becomes more organic. Meditation becomes more organic. And what I mean by that is it becomes normal. It becomes something that I'm comfortable with. And I'd say by the end of 1990, I was praying and meditating on a regular basis. When I would get up in the morning, I would have a prayer discipline and a meditation discipline, and I've kept that going. I've kept that going for a number of years. And I can tell you today that I pray and meditate more today than I did last year at the same time. And I prayed and meditated more last year around this time than I did the year before. So it's become an organic expression of my being. I mean, it's part and parcel of what I do. In the 11th step, now I've always been kind of a reader. I've always been the guy who's always interested in things. And there's a line in the 11th step in the big book that, there's some great books out there, ask some priests, ministers, or rabbis about some great books. So very early on, I started to read spiritual literature. And then I started to read a lot of spiritual literature. And here's what I've learned from 2,000 spiritual books. That when you read a spiritual book, it can make you feel very comforted, very centered for a short period of time if what you've done is read it. If you're lucky enough or disciplined enough to take certain parts of that spiritual literature and actually put it into practice, working practice, that's when the gifts start to show up. I know so many people out there. I've sponsored a lot of guys over the years, and I know so many people out there that it's very, very easy for them to learn this step stuff, to study the big book and really learn it and understand it at granular level, right? Those aren't the people that stay sober. The people that stay sober and stay in recovery are the people who take the spiritual exercises and actually do them. And here, this is the thing. You know, I had a meditation this morning on it, on understanding recovery. I was just meditating very deeply on it this morning, and it's not a bad thing to really know, you know, what Bill really meant, you know, in this paragraph. That's absolutely wonderful and really interesting. And there's big book studies out the gazoo now. When I first got sober, there was nothing like that. Now there's big book. You can go to a 24-hour big book meeting on Zoom, and you can get fed that. And it's like reading a spiritual book. It will be comforting and it will make you feel centered for a short period of time. It's the people who actually take these steps that get the real benefit from it. And the tricky part of this is, how do you know what you don't know? You have to take the steps to understand why you should have taken the step. You have to take the step to understand what the benefit of the step is. You have to, upon awakening, you know, we review the day ahead, you know, and all the exercises that it says for us to do in the book. You have to do that for a while until you understand why you should do that for a while. You know what I mean? And I'm one of these guys that really wants the cliff notes. I want the book. I want to be able to speak intelligently and in an informed way on this stuff. I'm not really sure that taking the step will really be necessary. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And thank God I was in front of some people who didn't allow me to get away with that. I wish I had $1 for you know, every person I've seen that really at core, when they're looking at their amends, thinks, you know, I don't really think that's going to be necessary. And it may not, but consider this: make the amend, put alcohol back in your body. You know, what if it's A or B and there's no door number C? You know, so those are the type of people that I was put in front of. And that's another aspect of the grace of God working in Chris's life. You know, there's a lot of wonderful instruction in step 11. Now here's the funny thing. Probably 2/3 of the verbiage in step 11 are promises. You know, there's a short amount of sentences as far as the directions we're supposed to take in step 11. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. You know, constructively, the way my head, my unrecovered alcoholic head would review a day would be like this: I can't believe I did, or I should have done this. I can't believe, you know, how stupid. You know, that's not when when we retire at night. Constructively review our day. You know, there's an old saying, and I started hearing it in like 3rd grade, and I forget who it's attributed to, but it's so true. An unexamined life is not worth living. And so much of the recovery work is us examining and then re-examining our life, and then asking God to help us do it better next time. The 12 steps really are spirituality 101. They're incredibly intuitive and incredibly practical. And this praying and this meditating, this praying and meditating is a powerful, powerful experience. I see people get caught up in a couple of other things that I have some experience getting caught up in myself. One of them is, all right, tell me more about this God. Tell me more about what God is. I need to know more about this God. And knowing more about God is the booby prize sometimes. It's what we're supposed to do is seek God. God is such an enormous. If God is everything, this is an enormous concept that I don't know that the human mind is even calibrated to understand. You know what I mean? I'm not even sure we're calibrated to understand. There are people who pretend to know everything there is to know about God, and they'll need $200 from you every month. You know what I mean? I just know that this concept of God is so large that what I'm seeking is I'm not seeking knowledge. I'm seeking experience with this God. So I can honestly say this. I absolutely know there's a God because I've personally experienced it. And I know countless other people, many of them, in these Hollywood squares tonight, who have experienced the power of God. So I'm going to seek through prayer and meditation. To broaden and deepen my experience with the divine. It's the perfect solution for alcoholism, because the true nature of alcoholism is being disconnected, not in unity with, not in concert with, always on the outside, looking in, feeling apart from. That's at heart what alcoholism is. It's an illness of dislocation. It's an illness of disintegration. It's an illness of isolation. We're the only people in the world that will treat our loneliness with isolation. That's just part of alcoholism. Alcoholism wants to cut you out of the herd. And getting in unity with, getting in connection with this experience of the divine is the perfect solution for alcoholism. Because at the end of the day, how you feel inside is all is well. All is well. Like it says in this, we know that when we turn to God, all will be well with us. And so there's a peace, there's a connection, there's an integration into where we truly are supposed to be as human beings, as the result of these steps. So, here I am, I'm reading just tons of books, comparative religion, I'm reading all this kind of stuff, and it's all wonderful stuff. And what it really has done for me is it's improved my vocabulary when I'm talking about spiritual principles. What has really changed me is upon awakening, as I move through the day, when I retire at night. It's as simple as that. That's what really changes me. That's what gets me connected to God. there's some wonderful promises in our literature, and they're extraordinary, right? They're extraordinary. No matter what your present circumstances are, you'll live in a new and a wonderful life. The most satisfactory years, your most satisfactory years lie ahead of you. The consciousness of the presence of God is going to be the most important thing in your life. And I just believe today that that's what being a recovered alcoholic is. It's someone who has developed this intuitive relationship with the divine. And I love that Alcoholics Anonymous, especially the big book. In the 12 and 12, there's, Catholicism is sprinkled in there, which, I'm not a judge. But this particular book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is completely a non-sectarian. It's just talking about the basics of God, the basics of spirituality, the basics of connection to this divine. And that's what's really, really important. And you can get to that. You can practice religions. You can practice all kinds of different religions. You can practice all kinds of different philosophical traditions and practices. As long as, this is the basis of practice, and this becomes integral to your operational methodology, you're gonna be fine. And you can go all over the map with all kinds of different things. You can wear robes, and you hand out flowers, and knock on people's door at 6 a.m. on Sunday. You can do all those things, and it's all cool. It's all well and good. The core needs to be this stuff. And you can also be non-religious following these practices. You're going to be spiritual, because this is spirituality, this solution. But the guardrails are just so wide. All of us can find a way. All of us can find a way, seeking through prayer and meditation to gain a better contact with this God of our understanding. And in this book, Bill uses so many beautiful descriptions of Father of Light, the great reality, a power greater than ourselves. Wonderful, wonderful terminology, which is open to all. It's broad, it's roomy, it's all inclusive. Come on in and let's recover. But the only thing that you will stub your toe on and not get any further is if you have belligerent denial, if you just reject these concepts as being silly or not necessary. You're gonna have a hard time with this recovery thing. Willingness, open-mindedness, honesty. Let's go, because I gotta tell you, die an alcoholic death, live life along spiritual lines. I mean, come on. I know it's a tough decision in the beginning. Could you give me a little bit more information on that alcoholic death? Does that take a while? But come on, let's live life along spiritual lines, die an alcoholic death. What's our choice going to be? God is everything or God is nothing? What's our choice going to be? If God is the most important thing in our lives, and many of us say that, right? Let's prove it upon awakening, as I move through the day, and when I retire at night. And that's about all I got. I'm 11 stepped out. This has been a fun meeting to be at. Thanks a lot.